Live. This is Sean Vittori with the Lights Camera Pro podcast. I am here with my good buddy Eddy Fernandez. How you doing, Eddy?
I'm good. I'm good. It's good to catch up with you after all this time.
Yeah, man. I think we talked in the hallway a bunch of times at a Turner party. On the internet a few times. It's crazy. This is so amazing because you learn stuff about people that I was with Wayne Johnson in the edit room for 10 years, and he told me stuff I had no idea he had done. This
Hmm.
producer at Turner. So you learn a lot about people. We're going to talk about how you got started and all this other stuff, and a bunch of stories in your career. So it's very cool. But first, everybody can see on the screen here that Eddy is a video editor. He's also a writer and a producer. We're going to look at some of his work, some of his clips, and just talk some stories, have some fun. But first, I got to get to these two ads. So I'm going to talk about Restream, which is a partner. I'll show a little ad here and talk over it. Restream is a service that takes your live and sends it to several services like we are today: YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, vMix. It also has a live studio, which is very cool, so you can go directly from there, and that's Restream. And then you can see on our screen here, ECAMM is another partner. I'm an affiliate, and they are what I'm using to go live. This is like a Jimmy Kimmel talk show, and I have sound effects, I've got logos, I've got text, I've got lower thirds, I've got clips, I've got photos, and we can just do our own little live TV show here on the internet. I do that with ECAMM, which is a great product. I love it. Everybody should check it out. And also just tell you guys, I'm going to put up a little thing here now. Any questions or comments you have for me or Eddy throughout the program, just put it in the comments on Facebook or LinkedIn, wherever you're watching, Twitter, and they'll come up and we'll answer them and include you in the broadcast. So, Eddy, what is up, man? I
I,
like your
I'm just
shirt. What's going on there? You got like Toucan Sam or something?
well, this is my
Nice.
my grand premiere for this shirt. I wore it for you. I
Yeah,
also did up my hair really nice.
I
I
know.
want you to know that since about March 22nd, I look like somebody took a giant rock off of a cave, right? And then I
Yeah.
crawled out of it. Me and like the 5 or 6 extra Dead Sea Scrolls. So
Yeah.
today's like the first time that I've like really
You like
done it
cleaned
up a
up
little
your
bit.
beard and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it
Nice.
was crazy. I had to hire a landscaper. It was a whole thing.
Some hedge clippers on there. So
I just before you get started, I
yeah,
wanted to say I thought it was super cool. I'm like I've got my monitor here and I can see the broadcast.
right.
I'm watching the restream and how it works and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And man, that's like it was a year ago the last time somebody told me it's really hard to work from home. And I'm like, is it?
Yeah. I love it, man. It's great. I'm hoping to get more freelance gigs or a gig where I can work from home. I'm actually applying for podcast jobs, not just video editor jobs, as a producer and editor.
Hmm.
And there's a ton of remote jobs, so we'll see, man. But yeah, I'm really excited. So let's go to our first question. I'm going to put up a little still here that I grabbed from your website. It's called Eddy the Editor. How did you come up with Eddy the Editor? It's everywhere, all over your website.
I wish I could take credit for that. It's such a great idea. It was actually my wife.
Okay.
Um, she was just like, "Oh my God, Eddie the editor," and so I made that into my website. I also wanted it for a Twitter. I haven't done a ton with Twitter yet, but I want to use it
Okay.
more because it's between Twitter and LinkedIn. That's how we connect in our industry. You share
Right.
articles, you share stories, and whatever your work. Anyways, for the Twitter account, somebody else owned it, and she is that person is a book editor in the UK, and I had to reach out to her, and she was really gracious and let me keep the Eddie the editor Twitter
Oh,
handle.
cool.
But yeah, it works. It's alliteration, it's easy
Yeah.
to remember. Eddie the editor, you can't
Yeah.
go wrong.
Yeah, no, I like it. Okay, so we're going to go to our first question here that we ask everybody all the time, and that is, how did you know you wanted to be in the film and TV industry? Were you like 5 watching Spielberg movies? Were you in high school? Were you in college? When did you know you wanted to do this for a living?
I never had a realization. I came off of the factory line that way. I'm a really advanced cyborg from space and the future. Uh, No, man. Since I was a kid, movies have always been a big deal in my family. It's like our pastime, but it's an interesting thing. I'm almost 40, and I've just kind of started to realize that in my family, movies were the way that we chose to express our emotions, or at least could open up that part of ourselves.
Hmm.
I don't think it's like a Latino thing. I think it's probably just like a male thing. We have a hard time connecting with our emotions, but nobody can sit through ET and not cry. Nobody can watch a Robin Williams movie and not feel moved. And so I think from an early age, because I was taught to kind of like revere this medium,
Hmm.
I always knew that I wanted to be a part of it somehow. And then as I got older, I realized that that I'm a storyteller, and it doesn't matter if it's a promo or trailer I'm editing, or some like a script I want to write, or telling you a story about how I got into movies. I like to tell stories,
Right.
and so it picked up from there, and just a lifetime of watching movies and great TV and stuff like that.
Very cool. Yeah, there was something on Twitter about, does this generation like Spielberg movies or whatever? And sadly, dude, I love, love Spielberg, E.T., all these movies. But my kids, I sat down with my kids, they're 17 and 16 now. My son just turned 16. I have twin daughters who are 17. And I sat down with them and showed them E.T., and they were like, Dad, what is this? That thing doesn't even look real. It looks like a plastic toy or something that you buy at
Yeah.
Toys R Us. And I was like, come on, guys, just get it. Yeah, just get into the movie, man. Come on. Because they do like the Star Wars, the new Star Wars. They like that stuff. And they like all the Marvel stuff. But
Yeah.
they're just like, E.T., this is a joke, man. That looks so stupid.
Well, so the thing is, when you're a kid, you're drawn to the spectacle. I'm not a child anymore, and I have trouble keeping my attention span lined up when I need to.
Right.
And as a kid, it was even worse. So I'd watch like I grew up watching Star Trek, but when they started making like the next generation Star Trek movies, they had a better special effects budget. They were using
Mm-hmm.
computer generated stuff, which they weren't before.
Yeah.
The music sounded better. It was much more I can't remember if I'm using this the right way, but legato, like flowing versus staccato, where it's very.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, that meant modern.
Right.
For me, high school and the first year of college was like the late '90s, early 2000s, and that was like a really great time for motion pictures. I think '99 actually is known as being like the one year that had like the most amazing movies come out within a 12-month period.
Was that your Back to the
And
Future movie? Because you were telling me about how you wore out the DVD watching the behind the scenes.
no, 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 no.
No.
Well, first of all, thank you for saying it was a DVD. I'm way older than that. It was a VHS.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, for those of you kids out there watching who don't know what that is, it's a plastic cassette with a magnet-based tape inside that inexplicably was cheaper than a disc, which costs like a penny to make. But no, what I'm getting at is when you're a kid, you tend to be drawn to the spectacle. So like Back to the Future, the first one was made in '85, the last one was made in '91. But those movies, they still hold up today. The effects are so good, they're so solid, they're so crisp,
Right.
that it could just still be a modern movie essentially. But what's going to happen with your kids, it's what happened with me, is as you get older, you become more forgiving of the spectacle, because you realize it's icing on the cake.
Right.
So
It's just
like,
a story.
I love Cuban rum cake, but the icing's delicious, but if you're only eating the icing, it's not as good. And they'll come back to the ETs and the older Spielberg movies, and they'll realize the treasures that they are. Like, I hated 2001, and I'm a sci-fi nerd through and through.
Yeah.
And I watched it again 4 or 5 years ago for the first time, and it like blew my brains all over the back of my like home theater wall. It was like the greatest sci-fi I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But you got to grow into it sometimes. But
Yep.
yeah, for me Spielberg was my Kubrick, just like Kubrick was Spielberg's Kubrick.
Right. Right.
So he informed a lot. I mean, he produced Back to the Future, which is probably Back to the Future, Apollo 13 are like some of my all-time favorite movies. He produced Back to the Future. Robert Zemeckis directed it, which, I mean, Robert Zemeckis.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's probably for sure my first starting point was Steven Spielberg and Robert Zemeckis. After that, it was like, I don't care how I do it. I got to get into this.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we're going to show some of your stuff, man. We're going to start out with this Fox 911 Jaws promo, which is a lot of fun. Like I was telling you before off camera, that it has that Sicario music, like the which I really like. It gets you into it. But then also you realize, I hope I'm not giving too much away, that it's Jaws music, because that's the name of the spot. So let's just check that out. We'll both be muted while it plays automatically, and we'll talk about it after. Here's a promo for Fox 911, the show.
Jaws! Right? Oh, right, those Jaws.
Whoa! My face is off!
Dude, that was cool. I like that.
It was a fun spot. Yeah, so this one was an unaired one. We did 3 of them. Fox liked all 3 of them. But they chose the more dramatic, emotional spot for that episode. But it was super fun to cut, because how often do you have a show about something so serious? I mean, these firefighter shows, cop shows, that's literally life or death, and you're doing like a funny Jaws takeoff.
It was very cool. I liked it. So we're going to talk about this as we go, but let's just start. What is it like to work for these different networks? Because we're going to show something from Fox, something from NBC, something from TNT, something from ABC. I don't know if you could talk about each of them or what the differences are. Just any way you want to describe it. What is it like working for all these different networks?
So every network, every collaborative partner you work with, it's a world unto their own. You know this because you've done it too. And so you have to develop some kind of shorthand. You don't have time to do it beforehand. You're just dropped in.
Right.
So the most important thing is to communicate, to make sure you're on the same page. And as long as everybody involved is dedicated to putting out really great work, the rest just kind of figures itself out. And so that's kind of how I approach it. The other thing that informs each individual company is what their needs are and what they hired you for. So with Fox, I worked through an outside vendor. Actually, a producer's name is Jay Sustrich. Good guy. Really creative, really smart, funny. And our team came up with 3 concepts. So this was my favorite. The other ones were great, but obviously you saw why. It's kind of silly, and I like that.
Right.
But for example, when I worked for ABC, I wasn't an outside contractor. I was actually I was an employee. It was a staff member. And so there was a lot of in-house promos, and I did stuff like Jimmy Kimmel. I worked on Lost at the very end, which was nuts. The amount of stuff that it's like they're going to put you in this bank vault and close the door, and you have to wear an oxygen mask because it's going to run out of air soon, but we can't let anybody know. It's super crazy. Turner is a whole different beast altogether.
Right.
First of all, it's not in Los Angeles, so it's a different culture. I found it to be ooh, no, this is not good. Sorry. Windows pop up. So I found Turner to be a lot tighter as far as like the people you make friendships with, your coworkers and stuff. We usually had a little more time to work on stuff than I was used to in Los Angeles. So it enabled me to really dig into the kinds of things that I would normally look at later and think, I wish I could do this, or I wish I could do that with Turner. I actually had the time to do that stuff.
Right.
But yeah, it's just the job you're hired for and the employer you work with, your collaborators, it's a whole different world. Right now, yeah.
Any differences on ABC? Well, no, you said ABC. I'm sorry, NBC. Was NBC any different or just the same?
So NBC was really interesting for me because that was very, very early in my career. It was maybe a year and a half after I moved out to Los Angeles from Miami, which is, I love Miami, but it's very, very different than Los Angeles. And NBC is what I grew up watching on TV as a kid.
Okay.
Fresh Prince, Saved by the Bell, you name it, Blossom.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that was church. That was the gospel. And to be able to walk down those halls, I mean, a lot of history.
Yeah.
So they were more entrenched. The people that were there, most of them had been there longer and had done stuff that I watched growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very intimidating for me. It wasn't by any fault of theirs. These people, I'm still friends with a lot of them. A lot of them are mentors. But at the time, I was just a kid walking into this like shrine of television history.
Right.
And like didn't even know what to do with myself. I actually learned Avid Media Composer for that job.
Right.
And it was a short-lived experience because I wasn't quite ready for the big time yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I did do some really great work, and the stuff that I learned there I would later elaborate on in other places where I worked.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, if I ever had the opportunity to work with them again in a heartbeat, wouldn't even think about
In
it.
a heartbeat.
I love NBC. Yeah.
Okay, so actually that's our next spot. It's the NBC. What is it? Who do you know? Do you know
Who do you think you are?
Who do you think you are? Okay, we're gonna watch this clip and we'll talk about it.
In the weeks ahead,
I want to find out my family story.
You feel like you're a detective tracking down bits and pieces.
their search for the past continues.
This man is your cousin, Louis XIV.
And it kicks off with Emmett Smith.
You need to understand where you were to appreciate where you are.
Born before 1865.
They were slaves.
Book 22.
I've been wearing jersey number 22 since college. Odd.
Maybe it's your destiny.
New Who Do You Think You Are? Next Friday at 8/7 Central on NBC.
Very cool, man. Can you say anything about that spot, the process, who you worked with?
Yeah, so first of all, I really liked that spot when I did it. I still like it a lot now. I think the human beings, we have this instinctive desire to find our roots, to figure out where we come from.
Yeah.
And so that show specifically, Who Do You Think You Are? I'm about to make a really weird comparison, but it's like Unsolved Mysteries, except without like the very dark Robert Stack, creepy kind of vibe, which I love.
Yeah.
In that it's essentially immortal. That show has existed in some form or another since before this promo was cut,
right.
And it's still on the air on a different network.
Right.
And so I really liked the idea of taking these people who everybody thinks they know, like Lisa Kudrow and Spike Lee and a lot of the people that are featured in these things. And you think you know who they are, but they don't even know who they are. And then through the course of the show, they kind of connect the dots. And I think it's important, it's emotional, and that's where I went with this, because it wasn't like their biggest show. It wasn't like a Friends situation or anything. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it deserved a shot, and I tried to demonstrate that with the promo that I put together for it.
Right. I like it. I like the flow. It has a good flow. What is your feeling about flow? Because I have this idea, because I don't know if everybody knows this, but I'm also a video editor. I've done some other things, but flow to me is essentially the spot cuts itself. So you're starting to put it together, you're putting in a rough cut, you're putting music, trying different music, and literally I'm watching it and the spot is saying, that doesn't work, put in the other music. And then when you put in the other music, okay, this works. That clip doesn't work there. So I'm in a way, I'm almost not making the choices. like the spot is telling me what to do, but then there is a flow to every shot and the shot after and the shot after it plays with the music, and it's almost indescribable. People say, okay, how do you know that clip doesn't work there? And I'll say, I don't know. There's a million different reasons why, but I just know it doesn't work. Do you feel that way, or how do you approach it? How do you look at editing?
I mean, no, that's pretty much what it is. Editing is very instinctual. I've told this to people a lot who ask me about editing. Anybody can download Final Cut or Adobe or Avid or any other editing software and learn how to use it. And it's the equivalent of knowing how to turn a steering wheel in a car. Turning a steering wheel doesn't make you a driver. But that said, being an editor has a lower bar to entry in the industry than, like, let's say, being like a leading man or a super famous director.
Right.
If you're willing to put in the time and the work and be honest when you do the work, like paying attention to the flow, making sure that the shots feel right, that they flow from one shot to the next, that your timing is right, your pacing is right, that your edits work for the message you're trying to convey. Simple things like people listen to the music in a promo and never ever consider the damn near heroic efforts that some of these editors put in to making the music work. Because even the music tells a story. Essentially it starts slow and it picks up, and then there's your big crescendo, and then you end over here. We've resolved the story. Great example of that is the trailer for Wonder Woman 84. I saw that trailer. I was ready to quit and never edit again, because sometimes some stuff inspires you, and then some stuff you watch it and you're like, I will never come close to this. I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to go make soap or something in the backyard.
But what about the Nike? Have you seen the Nike?
That's another one of those.
The new
I'm
spot.
quit my job promos.
But let me ask you this, because it is really well done. But I feel like supposedly they went through 75,000 clips or something. I feel like it's almost like AI. You're connecting, like, okay, this soccer player is going to move across the screen to the other side, and then it's going to turn into a gymnast. It's almost like, okay, we're matching footage, but there is an art to the music and the flow and the voiceover all working with it. But still, some of it seems like, okay, we've got some interns finding clips that match.
On the surface, if you do what we do, it's really easy to see that and be awed by the amount of work they put into it.
Yeah.
But if you're a giant nerd like I am, you know that the human eye sees from the top left. Actually, I'm going to be inverted here. Just go with it.
Right.
Top left to bottom right, and then over bottom left to top right.
Right.
That's primary. And then your secondary is you will follow motion.
Right.
Okay? So on the surface, it's a bunch of interns finding clips that more or less match. But beneath that, when you look at that spot, you'll notice that every single shot has a stark juxtaposition in some way or another. The person that starts off over here is maybe on a skateboard going into one of those crazy ramps.
Right.
And the person falling on the other side is falling off of a surfboard.
Right.
Okay. This person over here that's jumping to hit the ball with her racket is a tennis player, but the person that falls on the other side is sliding into home plate. You might have something as straightforward as a white athlete and a black athlete on the other side. And what you're seeing with this technique is essentially the creation of an image of unity. We're all the same. We're all going through the same motions.
Yes.
We're all part of this tapestry. If life is an ocean, each of us is a water molecule. And when I saw that blew me away, because on the surface, like, yeah, the technique's really cool. You matched a couple clips together. But when you see it for what it is, what the message you're trying to convey, it's masterful. And that, to me, that is amazing producing. It's amazing editing, because you're saying so much more with your technique than just, I can edit this to the music.
Right. And I think you made a really good point there. I mean, it is a beautiful spot about unity. It's also about that sports never die, or we never die. We keep going. But it's really interesting how you could, or they could have, the people who made the spot, they could have made just, every person white or every person black or every person Asian or whatever it is, so that there wouldn't have been that, you have the softball player who's a girl who turns into I think it's a baseball player who's a boy. So that you've got gender and sexuality and race and all these things because of the way you're juxtapositioning them and because of the clips you choose. It's really cool.
And the other big thing too is people. I've always heard people talk about team sports as being the equivalent to gladiatorial combat in Rome, ancient Rome. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's that bloodlust we have. We want to see these people beat each other up. But if that was true, you could just do that on the street, form a fight club. It's deeper than that. It's about our desire to have family, to have a bond with our community. That's what sports is. Before they were gathering in the Colosseum to watch two dudes tear each other to shreds, they were sitting around a campfire telling stories about their gods or about their harvest or about taking down a mastodon or something. Community is the root of all public gathering.
Right. And
this spot hits that.
Yes, it does.
In a powerful way.
What's really cool, I worked for the NBA for 9 years, and the really cool thing that I actually never noticed about it is that did some features and behind the scenes things talking about race and about how in different situations in like a workplace or in a school, things might be different. But when you're on a team, a sports team, and it doesn't matter what race you are, all of a sudden you're all the same. Mm-hmm. So in society, it doesn't always work that way. There's different hierarchies and people being hired and, whatever's going on that's not fair or unjust. But when you're on a sports team, if you make the team, the soccer team, the basketball team, and Greg Popovich, the coach for the Spurs, talked about it in length in this documentary about how every single person on that team is equal and they're all the same people, and it doesn't matter what race they are all one community, like you said, or all one team.
Yeah, we tend to separate ourselves tribally. I'm going to bring it back to the entertainment and the editing. Mm-hmm. You see it in our industry. Oh, that guy's an editor, that girl's an editor. Oh, he's a producer, she's a producer. He's a writer, she's a writer. Director, it's actor, et cetera, but ultimately we all more or less have the same goal, and you may be editing or acting or writing. Your goal is to make visual entertainment, a TV show, a movie, a trailer, a promo, a podcast. Mm-hmm. And I think when you use your editing, when you see it beyond just I'm cutting clips to the music, I'm cutting clips so that the motion of the outgoing clip matches the incoming clip, or the steroids version of that, which is I'm going to have both clips on screen at the same time and they complete each other halfway through. It's like it's like just the surface, the powerful editing there is the idea that from 5 fingers comes a fist, when you edit, when you do your editing the right way, when you really put the work in, when you love it, when it's your blood, it's your life, that's the kind of stuff that comes out of it. And it's really powerful, and you don't always get the opportunity to do that. And sometimes you do it without ever intending to do it because you think, oh, this is just a little promo for a TV show about some athlete finding their ancestry. It's just how it is. You just go with it. The content tells you what it wants to be, as you were saying.
Right. So let's just take a little side note here. We're going to watch a couple more clips, and then we're going to talk advice. But a little side note, and the side note is, I saw on your Facebook page years ago that at your wedding,
oh my God,
everybody, I don't even know why I'm asking this question, but I'm just doing it. Everyone at your wedding had lightsabers and the room was dark and the lightsabers were lighting up the room. What was that all about, Eddy? What is going on? I mean, it's hilarious and it's awesome at the same time. What was happening? And how did you get your wife to agree to that? Or was it her idea?
It was her idea, but her idea was, she was like, what if we had the bridal party holding up lightsabers when we walked by? And I loved it. I love Star Wars. And I went to Walmart and I thought I could buy 6 Star Wars branded lightsabers. But then right next to them, they had something called a laser sword. And it was on clearance. It was like $1. Anyways, I knew we were going to have about 100 guests. And I knew I could spend $100 on 100 laser swords. So that's what I did. And I bought the last 3 cases that they had. And we handed them out to people as they showed up to the wedding, specifically so we could get that picture. And the other thing, my wife is the real GOAT. Okay, she's the best. We didn't really know what venue we wanted. We kind of wanted to elope, but it occurred to me that it would be important for her to have her family, her grandmother there, people who otherwise couldn't come.
Right.
Because again, your family, your community, it's important to have that, especially during important moments like that. And so we were looking around, and I found that there was a planetarium in near her hometown that you could rent out to have weddings. And I love space. I'm a huge nerd. I love, for me, astronomy, science, that's the Bible to me. I love that stuff. And I asked her if she would be okay with that. And thankfully for me, she was. She thought it was really cool. And we did it. So we got married. They had stars projected on the planetarium dome. That's what you're seeing there, although the flash kind of covers up the dome a little bit.
Right. I just pulled up the photo. I didn't want to interrupt you, but it's up there now just to show everybody. I just grabbed it off your Facebook page.
So yeah, our guests are there, and when we walked in, she had we did a Star Wars space movie kind of thing. So when we walked in, the bridesmaids and my wife had a song. I think it was a piece of music from Edward Scissorhands. And then I don't know if you remember a few years back when the first of the new Star Wars movies came out, that Jimmy Fallon did that thing where they have the Brady Bunch squares on screen. And everyone's humming the Star Wars music.
Oh, yeah.
So that was what we walked into. And I extended it. And it was great. It was awesome.
That's so awesome. Dude, that is just hilarious. Okay, so moving on. I just saw that. And I was like, I got to show this picture. So moving on to TNT Shatterbox Control. This was a Refinery 29, it was a little web series. I don't want to say little, but a web series.
So Shatterbox was a female film competition. They wanted to focus on female directors and writers and creators. And it was a program that aired on the linear network on TNT. And they would feature these short films. And man, they had some super cool ones, really, really good ones. And so I don't know what was going on with it before it got put on my plate, but I knew that somebody else had taken a stab at it or something. For whatever reason, it wasn't quite right. So they put it in front of me, and I didn't watch anything else related to how it had been cut. I just saw these things, and I thought, man, I could cut some super awesome trailers for these. I did 4 of them, and this is the one that's on my site because I liked the technique the most, and it was the most different from other stuff that's already on my site. And yeah, I treated it like if it was a feature-length film, and I cut a trailer accordingly.
Very cool. All right, it's kind of sci-fi. I like it. I like the pacing. I like the editing. Let's just watch it. This is Control on TNT Shatterbox Film Festival or something.
I bet you've always suspected it. You felt those tiny strings inside of you. The virus, faster and far more ruthless than anything we've seen. Why are you here? I'm here for you. We fought the world's first cyber war.
We won a war knowing you how to fight.
You can hide your ink, but you can't hide who you are.
Shatterbox presents Control. Stream all short films now on the TNT app.
Very cool, man. I like that one.
Watching it here on delay, I love that scene where she walks in with the laser guns, just goes crazy with
starts shooting everybody. Yeah,
oh my God, I love that.
That's cool. Yeah, there's a little bit of a delay. So if anybody out there has any questions for me or comments for Eddy, go for it, and we will talk to you and put them on air. There's a really cool feature that Facebook has that, and I haven't done it yet because no one I know has really been up in this feature on the comments, but you can bring people onto the broadcast. So I don't want to bring up a stranger, but if it's someone that I do know, I'm going to try it out, and you can be like, hey, do you want to come on the broadcast? And you can just click on it, and literally, if they have a webcam on, they'll be up here with us talking about something. So it's really cool. I got to try that sometime.
It's going to be like Maury Povich and Eddy, I want you to meet your son.
Yeah. Eddie, I got something to tell you. We got a paternity test. So the next one's kind of fun. It's ABC Dancing with the Stars. And, it's kind of fun. It's kind of cheesy, but I feel like it's kind of hard to put this thing together. There's a lot of effects. There's a lot of green screens. It's not something that's super simple. Is that true? Was it hard to make?
Tedious. Not necessarily hard at that point because I'd been at ABC for a while. So that's kind of how we treated everything. It's just full on energy. Throw everything you can at it.
Mm-hmm. And are you keying the stuff out, or is that like a graphics person that's keying? Because a lot of them are keyed out against green screens, these contestants.
I think by the time it got to me, it had already been keyed out. NBC would do this to a lot of the bigger networks. They'll prepare a suite of footage, B-roll and stuff like that. They'll pre-treat it so that we have it in our library for when we start doing like launch spots or episodics or stuff like that. So I think a lot of this stuff was already pre-done, but then the transitions with the flashy effects and all like that stuff I had to do. I think for this spot, the thing that gave me the most trouble was the music. It was tricky.
Okay. All right, let's watch it. Here we go. ABC Dancing with the Stars promo, edited by Eddy the Editor.
They've been called many things.
I'm a lover.
Tonight at 8/7 Central, 12 of America's biggest names will fight.
I am a fighter.
For one more title.
Vote for me.
Dance Champion.
We got a situation.
Dancing with the Stars 2-night premiere event live tonight, 8/7 Central, kicking off Red Carpet Premiere Week on ABC.
Oh my God, the situation at the end there with the abs. So ridiculous, man.
There was like 5 edits between his face and his abs in that spot with a bunch of bright flashes. I don't even think it's legal to do that on TV anymore.
Right. It probably gives someone a seizure or something.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that show is just like watching a train wreck. It was so crazy. Jersey Shore.
That's why people like it.
Yeah, no, there was this other show. You're probably old enough, maybe not the 20-year-olds, but what was it called? Anna Nicole Smith. Oh my God. Such a train. Like, I could not stop watching that. It was on E!
It was amazing.
A little bit of Kardashians was like that in the beginning, but oh my God, just such a train wreck, her life. Like, I think she was drunk on camera most of the time. Like, it was insane. It was like, come on, man, you got to take this woman off the air.
Yeah. But it was fun to watch, and we still watch stuff like that. It may not be exactly the same, but there's something about watching something as mundane as going to get groceries, but you're like a Kardashian or somebody who's ultra famous, and like what should be a quick trip to pick up some Twinkies turns into a whole adventure. And people like to watch it. It's fun.
Right. I'm going to ask you about who's your favorite editor in a minute. I don't know if you have it inside your head. If not, we can do director. But before we get to that, I just want to ask you, like, what are the hours like? I know Turner, so we won't talk about that. But when you're at ABC, Fox, TNT, I'm sorry, not TNT, NBC, ABC, like, are you working late? Are you working weekends? Are you working holidays? Is it more like a bank 9 to 5?
I don't necessarily know that I ever had a banker's hours editing job. As a matter of fact, we in Los Angeles, my friends and I, we always had a joke about, oh, you're working banker's hours, because they only worked like 12 hours that day.
Yeah.
And no, it depends on what you're doing, and it depends on the client. Some clients want you to work around the clock, and usually they pay you accordingly, so it's not so bad.
Right.
You're tired, but you're paid.
Yeah.
Also, you could just be working on something like the behind the scenes stuff I worked on. The hours could be crazy, but I really, really enjoyed that, because behind the scenes material is how I started to really get into wanting to make movies. Some jobs you'll work 9 hours, let's say, on average, and then on occasion you'll, like Turner was like that. It's like 8 or 9 hours.
Yeah.
And then on occasion you'll just have just a super, super long day.
Is that because of deadlines or because of?
It's a few things. It's almost, the deadline's almost always the biggest reason, but then there's ancillary reasons for that. Like you may have a shortage of other editors. Maybe somebody's on vacation. You might have picked up 2 or 3 extra clients that weren't on the roster, but the more the merrier. So then now you have to work more. Or you're doing a reality show, which means just handling an insane amount of footage. Reality shows, as you know, as you're aware of as an editor, they have a lot of what's called frankenbiting, which is you take a bunch of sound bites and you cut them together like a Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah.
And you hear it on a lot of reality shows where they say something, but if you really listen to it, you can clearly hear that it's like, I went to the store yesterday.
Right.
And so when you're dealing with that kind of stuff, you get a ton of notes, especially if your producer, your client knows that Frankenbite is there. They are going to listen to it, and you'll have to circle back on it 100 times. And so reality jobs pay really well, but then the hours are very, very long.
Right.
But it wasn't uniform. It just depends on who you're working for, what you were doing.
So I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to tell a little story so you can think about it. But what was the longest day of your career? So I'm going to tell the story about the longest day of my career real quick. And then you think about what story you want to tell for the longest day of your career. I don't know if you know it already, but I was working at McCann Erickson in New York, and we were doing a pitch for Intel. And I didn't know we were doing a pitch for Intel because I was getting on the elevator at 6 o'clock to go home to my family in Westchester, and someone literally grabbed my arm, my shirt on the elevator, and they were like, we need to pitch Intel in the morning. You can't go home. And I was like, what? I just worked 9 hours, like, what are you talking about? Like, come on. You got to go talk to the boss. So we went and talked to the big boss, and they're like, we need you to stay here. So I'd already been there at 9 a.m. and commuted in, an hour commute, whatever. And so we worked all through the night, and we worked up until the next morning and put the video together in one day. It was like a 2-minute pitch video. And so that was about 24, I think I left at 9:30. So 24 and a half hours straight was the longest day of my career. And they just literally ran the tape, at that time it was a 3/4 inch tape, down to the meeting to pitch Intel. And we did get the account, so that was cool. But, $500 million account or something. But yeah, man, I was just exhausted. But I've heard worse. So what was the longest day of your career?
The longest day of my career. I've had a lot of longest days of my career. So I don't have any one exact day, but it happened enough that I can give you like a general overview.
Yeah.
I'd show up at 8 or 9, whatever it was. We'd work all day. And then as I was getting ready to go home, I'd get the dreaded, we're going to need you to stay a little bit late. So when you hear, we need you to stay late, it means an hour or two. When you hear a little bit late, it means late. It means tomorrow.
Exactly.
And so,
oh man.
Essentially what would happen is I would work all night, and there were 2 or 3 times where I would work into the next day, and then some other thing, we'd finish the project, some other thing would come in, and I would have to just pick up my next shift. And so I'd work from 8 or 9 a.m. the one day to 7 or 8 p.m. the following day.
Wow.
And maybe like take a 1-hour nap in between, and drink tons of coffee. Tons.
How old? Do you remember how old you were, roughly?
About 23, 24.
Okay.
And I have not had to do that recently. I don't necessarily want to do it, but
no.
If I found myself, out in LA or in New York, and it's something like if I was ever working for Saturday Night Live, and they're like, Eddie, we need you to cut this package for Lonely Island because Andy Samberg's coming to do this thing this week. Like in a heartbeat. Wouldn't even think twice
those
about
things
it.
are like 38, 36, 48 hours straight.
Yeah,
I've read articles about them. Yeah, totally
and
crazy.
Worth it. How many of those like seemingly throwaway videos are we still talking about 15 years later?
Oh, they're great. I love the little shorts on SNL. Okay, so we got a couple more things here. Who's your favorite editor? Is there an editor that you admire, or do you want to talk about a director?
So I know of a few editors who've edited films, but for me, when I look at a movie, I look more at the director.
Okay.
Just because they are kind of like the conductor of the orchestra.
Right.
So I think I'd probably rather talk about a director.
Sure.
That's cool.
Go ahead.
Okay. I would say for me, the top of the pyramid, the one whose movies got me into liking movies was Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg of the 80s was making movies about his life. So, for example, E.T. is a movie about an alien that shows up and is befriended by these kids who happen to be going through the aftermath of their parents' divorce. But when you really look at what that movie is, it's just about some kids that got divorced and how they figure out how to live with this new normal, with this new alien in their lives, as it were, which is the fact that their parents are not together. Magic. From there, it kind of evolved into, I will love Spielberg to the day I die. But then I met, in a film, watching his movie since, Robert Zemeckis with Back to the Future. Back to the Future, to me, all 3 of them together, it's one movie and it's perfection. I hope they never remake it. I hope they never reboot it. And it's another, produced by Steven Spielberg, directed by Robert Zemeckis. So you had the heart, and then you had another guy who brought heart to it, but he was great at taking like these little ideas and expanding them into these really epic stories. And when you look at Back to the Future, it's a story about a guy that all of a sudden has the ability to time travel. But when you really watch it, it's more about a guy who has to, in a way, make peace with where he comes from. I mean, at the end, he changes the timeline so that his parents now have money and it's different. But the idea is he has to make peace with where he comes from. And then from there, he's able to expand and elaborate on that. Like, you don't have to be like the nerdy guy that gets beat up by the bully the rest of your life. You can stand up for yourself. Tiny little thing that turns into this big, beautiful idea that has nothing to do with time travel.
Right.
But that's the vehicle through which, pardon the pun, they sell you the message. Then Ron Howard, Apollo 13 is my all-time favorite movie because he took a story that everybody on Earth knew, the guy coming out of the cave, and still found a way to bring it home in such an emotionally impactful way that when these guys land, which you already knew was going to happen, when the whole control room breaks out in celebration, if you don't cry there, you don't have a soul. I'm sorry. If you don't feel any emotion there.
But I have an argument here, and the argument is Tom Hanks. Like, that guy makes you believe everything. He's such a great actor. He's such a great human being. I mean, he had COVID and was the first to come back on Saturday Night Live, and but what every movie he makes you. Forrest Gump, whatever character he's playing, he makes you feel. I saw some movie with him and Julia Roberts about some teachers, and I was like, "What is this? This is going to be awful." By the end, I was like up against the screen, like, "What is going to happen next? Are they going to get together? Are they going to break up?" Like, I mean, anything that guy does is gold. He's just such an incredible actor.
Tom Hanks is my favorite actor. I tell this to people all the time. I feel like I could meet almost anybody, but if I ever met Tom Hanks, I would not know what to say. I wouldn't. Wilson.
Yeah.
You know, you're right. He's the kind of guy that can act opposite of volleyball. And the next time that you're at a sporting goods store and you walk by the volleyball section, you stop and you look over and you're like, because Tom Hanks made you love a volleyball.
Yeah. I don't know how he did it. Like everybody was like, he goes to this island, he talks to this volleyball, and I'm like, that's crap. I'm not watching that movie. That's stupid. Who the hell is going to watch that movie? And it was fantastic.
Here's the thing, and I think this goes to Tom Hanks as an actor and to Ron Howard as a filmmaker. Apollo 13 was based on a book called Lost Moon, which was written by the actual Jim Lovell and a writer called Jeffrey Kluger, and it's a great book, and you should read it. But it's a more literal retelling of the story, where the movie, obviously, you don't have 4 hours or 5 hours. You've got about 2 hours. And so when you watch Apollo 13, on the surface, it's about a doomed moon mission that fails, and somehow the guys get back. But the scene where you find out what that movie's really about at its heart, it's a choice made by Ron Howard, but then it's delivered by Tom Hanks in a big way, which is when they're about to circle the dark side of the moon, right before they go dark, the music swells up and you hear Annie Lennox humming in the background, and it's amazing because Annie Lennox could read like a soap bottle and it would be the most rhythmically amazing thing ever. And they're seeing this mountain on the moon that Jim Lovell saw when he orbited on Apollo 8, and they called it Mount Maryland. And Fred Hayes and Jack Swigert look over at Tom Hanks, come on, brain, sorry, Jim Lovell, and they say, "Hey, Mount Maryland's coming up. Do you want to see it?" And he looks up at them, very calm, and he says, "I've seen it." And then there's a beat, and then he says, "Gentlemen, what are your intentions for this mission?" And then not too long after that, you see a shot of Maryland looking up at the moon. And in that moment, what that movie is really about, its heart comes together, which is it's a movie about a guy who wants to get back home to his wife.
Yeah.
Only Tom Hanks could deliver that with like 5 words.
Only Tom Hanks. It's so amazing. Oh, man. Okay, so we're going to go on to advice. But did you know that Back to the Future was shot for 2 weeks with Eric Stoltz?
I did.
and then they're like, "Sorry, dude, this isn't working." And they grabbed Michael J. Fox, which is who they wanted initially, but I think he was doing Teen Wolf or something else. And they literally were just like, "We'll wait for you, dude. Like, we need you in this movie." And that's what it is sometimes with actors. You can only use certain actors.
It has to be that actor. And, you can go online and find that footage, the Eric Stoltz footage. It's funny you mentioned that. I was watching it like 2 or 3 days ago. It's good. Eric Stoltz is a really good actor, but it's just not Michael J. Fox.
Right.
Fun side story. There was a show on Fox several years ago now. It was called Fringe.
I remember it.
Anna
Torv and
show. And like how X-Files, the big thing was that there's aliens, that they've been here. With Fringe, their big thing was there's an alternate reality, a mirror universe of our own. And it's the same, but slightly different. And so there's an episode where they go to the other side, and it's in 1985, and they walk past a marquee, and it says "Back to the Future" starring Eric Stoltz.
I didn't know that. That's so cool.
Deep cut, man. Deep cut.
Deep cut. All right, so let's wrap it up. We're almost at 3 o'clock. I know you got stuff to do. You're going to go and edit the documentary. Maybe make a snack.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. Have some drink some soda. So advice, young editors, writers, producers, What is your advice to them? How do they get into the industry? How do they succeed?
I would say stay out, don't edit. I want to have more jobs. And if you're working, then maybe I'm not. No, I would say it's almost like any other job in that as long as you are willing to put in the work and put in the time, you can get really far. You have to be able to build relationships with people because it's a highly collaborative job. And if you can work well with others, you can get pretty far. The other thing I would say is good creative doesn't come from nowhere, right? Everybody is inspired by somebody else's work. And so if you, like me, for example, I love editing trailers and I love editing behind the scenes content because when I was growing up, watching shows about how they made movies I liked made me want to make movies and TV shows.
Right.
So it's okay to watch other people's content and be inspired by it. And you don't want to like directly rip it off, but I will just be 100% honest with you. As an editor, there have been a million times that I've seen a movie trailer and seen a technique that I liked and then tried to do my version of it on something I edit.
Right.
You know, like I mentioned the Wonder Woman trailer. I can't remember the name of the song, but it's How Does It Feel to Treat Me Like You Do?
Mm-hmm.
They took a version of that song and put it in this trailer, and that song is up for 2.5 minutes, the duration of the trailer. But that you watch that, and the next time you have a trailer, a promo, something that lets you do that, it's in the back of your mind, and you remember, I want to try something like this. It's okay to take those inspirations and run with them, because the people you're being inspired by were themselves inspired by somebody else, and that's how the art evolves. And the evolution of the art is what you bring to the table as the next generation of editors and writers and producers. So yeah, it can be tough, just like any other job. Just go into it with a sober mindset. Understand that it's not a straight line, and you are going to fail an insanely high amount of times with your work. But you will also have spectacular, smashing successes that will totally wipe all that other stuff away. And as long as you understand that, and you're okay with detaching a little bit emotionally from your work because you're going to get notes, you can go really far. And now's the time, because everything's going to streaming. 7.6 billion people on this planet right now, and at this point, the vast majority of them have internet access.
Right.
They need stuff to watch, and that's where you come in. The stuff doesn't make itself. Somebody has to cut it together, and that's what we do.
Right. Very cool, man. Very cool advice. This has been great. I just want to add this one little thing. I don't know if you know about this, but the movie Us by Jordan Peele, they took a hip hop song and they turned it, just a few chords of it, like the whoop, whoop, they turned it into a horror soundtrack for a trailer. And I don't even think they use it in the movie, but it was so cool what they did. They just took this piece of a song, not even the whole song, and they just used it, and it was like and turned it into horror. Took it from a hip hop song into horror, and it was chilling. It really worked with the images, and I was just like, that is so beyond anything I would ever even think of. So it's cool. The Nike thing, that there's so many things out there that you're like, oh my God, I would love to just. But it does change your thinking, because then when you go into your next project, you're like, you know what if we did this with the music? What if we didn't use the whole song? Maybe we re-recorded pieces of it, or just got rid of the vocals and pulled out different pieces of the song and then used that. So it makes you think about things in different ways. This has been awesome, man. I could talk to you all day, not only because we worked at the same place.
I'll come back if you want me to.
Yeah.
This is like the first 2 pages of what we can talk about. I mean, it's super fun. I'm happy that you invited me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And I'm going to do this thing where I get together with everybody who's been on the show and just have a drink. And right now it's like 56 people. So some of them are in LA and New York, and they won't show up, but half of them are in Atlanta. So So we'll have to do that too. But I am going to put this as an audio podcast in a couple months, and I'll text you and I'll let you know. Share everything on social. I will too. And tell your friends. And dude, this has been awesome.
And if you want to share a video, you can too. I want people to see this.
Mm-hmm.
I want people to be like, look at me. I am the captain now.
You're so funny, man. All right. Well, you have a great day. Thanks for doing this, man. And we'll do part 2 through 10 next week.
Sounds good. Take it easy, Sean.
Okay, buddy. Take care.